Well, we learn many things daily, but how many of those things are actually kept in our brains? Very few of them, right? In my last video, I talked about how you can learn things more effectively than your competitors. But in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can keep the things you learned inside your brain for a long amount of time. So let's get started. Now, actually remembering is not just keeping that information in our brain. When we learn something, the first step is actually getting it inside of our head properly. The second step is seeing that information is actually in our head or not, the feedback. And the third step is keeping it in our head for a long time. So when you talk about just remembering, it is not just a single step of keeping the information in our head. It is inputting, then storing, and then keeping it. The first step is getting that information inside your head. Well, you can try many methods, but according to me, there are 4 main methods that work. The first is flashcard method, or testing yourself with actual questions with it. So flashcard is actually useful for testing the facts or the rote learning, if you would, for remembering that particular information which you cannot understand in a particular way. After flashcards, you have free recall. So after you have read something or saw something, a tutorial or a course, you actually close it, you close the source, and then think about what you have read or what you saw and try to write it on a paper in the form of a concept map. Now, this technique which I am telling you is very old and mostly told by everyone. So it is a very common technique, but this technique actually works. This is called free recall. The third is making self-generated challenges. So you can create challenges for yourself, which actually gives you a real life experience, because of which the information retains in your mind longer and get most of the tiny details of the information also retain in your mind. The fourth technique is question book method. So what this technique says, that when you are learning something, you usually make notes, right? So instead of making notes, you write them in the form of questions. So in place of writing, this thing was invented in this date, you can write when was this thing invented. So this will actually make a sort of question. Let me give you one more example. Instead of writing that respiration consists of these 2 parts and this is the whole pathway, write it in a form of what parts do respiration consist of, and then in your notes write the answer to that. So when you'll be reading back the notes, you'll actually have a question answer booklet and you'll be able to understand it better while revising. Now, once you have inputted information in your brain, then comes the time or checking if that information is actually stayed in your head and if that information is articulated in the right way. This can also be done via feedback. Now, there are 3 types of feedback. The first is outcome feedback. This tells you that if you have done good or not. Like for example, grades A, B, C, D tells you about if you have done good and by how much you have done good. But it does not tell you about where you have done wrong or where are your mistakes. It does not tell about how to fix your mistakes. This is the most common type of feedbacks which almost all people experience. Let me give you one more example. Entrepreneurs, when they launch the product in the market, if the product does good, they do not know why the product has done good. It can be good marketing, or it can be good cost, or it can be if the product is good, they do not know why the product has done good, or if the product has done bad, why it has done bad. They only have the outcome feedback which tells them if the product has performed good or not. The second type of feedback is informational feedback, which tells you that where have you done wrong or where have you done right and where can you improve. But it does not tell you how to improve or how to fix the problem. The most common example is that while writing the code, you get errors and it tells you exactly where in the code there is an error, but it does not tell you how you can fix that error or how you can write your code better. One more example can be that while analyzing mock tests for your competitive exams, you understand that on which chapters or which type of questions you are doing wrong, but not how to fix them. The third type of feedback is the corrective feedback. Now, this is the most important type of feedback and the most sought after feedback, which tells you exactly how to fix the problem. This comes from coaches, teachers, and other guides for you. But actually, even if it is the most valuable, it is the rarest type of feedback. The most common type of feedback is the outcome feedback, which you have to deal with, unfortunately. In your learning journey, if you are able to afford a coach or a tutor, kudos to you. You can use corrective feedback to improve on a better scale. But usually only informational or outcome feedback is available to us. Well, you know how feedback helps you? It will help you realize that if your learning strategies are actually in the right order or not. And if the information you are actually wanting to store in your brain is getting articulated in the right order. If you think that from your feedback that you need to improve better, you can do things better, you can modify your learning strategies such that you are able to articulate things in your mind a better way. And there are mainly 3 tactics on how to do that. The first is high intensity practice. Well, you see, in the competitive exam world, I'm also preparing for a competitive exam. What happens is learning and just storing in our brains is not sufficient. You need to set the information in, and how that happens is when you practice it a lot. When you practice 1000, 2000 questions on a particular chapter, then only will the things settle in your mind. The second is hitting the difficulty sweet spot. Well, if the task is too easy for you, maybe the task is just not right for you. Or if the task is too difficult for you, the same conclusion. You need to set the task at a particular difficulty level which is challenging for you but not too easy for you. And you need to improve the challenges as you improve yourself. The third is meta feedback. You need to analyze that if your learning strategies are actually improving your results. So in coding, this is the best example, the coding. If you improve your code, you'll be able to see a better outcome, and with improving step by step, your outcome will improve. And that is how you know if your learning strategies or if your efforts are in the right direction. Now let's get to the main point. Keeping the information which we have stored with a lot of effort in our brain, kept in our brain for a long period of time. Now, why do we forget things? There are mainly 3 theories behind it. The first is decay theory. Decay theory states that with time we keep forgetting things because our brain is like a hard drive, and more information you keep putting in, it leaks from behind, and because it has a particular space. Well, this seems like a common sense and most people believe with time we keep forgetting things. But actually there is a flaw in this, that we forget arbitrary or not important information. Like you might not remember what you ate yesterday for lunch, but you might remember 5 years ago where you went to a trip with your family. This is the flaw with decay theory. The second theory is interference theory. Interference theory states that when you are learning a new thing, 2 similar things overlap with each other, making it difficult to learn. So there are 2 types of interference. First is the proactive interference. Proactive interference states that when you are learning new thing, you are not able to learn a new thing because you have already a set definition of an old thing in your brain. So this is a very common example of this type of interference. The word negative reinforcement. Well, when you hear that, you associate negative with the actual meaning of the word negative, which is something bad happening. So negative reinforcement according to you might be punishment. But in reality, negative reinforcement means that you are removing a particular thing in order to get a particular response from an object or from an organism. This is negative reinforcement. The second type of interference is retroactive interference. Retroactive interference states that when you learn a new thing, it suppresses the old thing. This is a very common type of interference. For example, you are learning a new programming language. You learn Java after learning Python. Quite some time of learning Java, you will remember Java, but you will forget Python. This type of interference can take place simultaneously as well. The third theory is forgotten cues. Well, this theory states that our memory and our retention of that memory and is linked via a chain of small links or cues. What happens is when we remember something, we activate our retention, we activate our memory from these cues, and with time, with decay or interference, some of that cues may get degenerated, and that is why we are not able to access a particular memory even though it is stored in our brains. Well, these were the 3 theories about why we keep forgetting things. But the question arises, how to remember things for a long period of time? Now there are 4 ways, according to me, the best 4 ways on how you can remember things. The first is using spaced repetition softwares. Well, this is nothing more than doing revision. Well, research suggests that in place of learning 10 hours at a particular time, 10 hours straight, you should divide your learning time into sessions of 1 hour each for 10 days. This is a better way to learn. Well, I do not completely agree with this research because I think that in that 1 hour you spend daily, there is some time you spend on actually getting started and getting the focus right zone. If you talk about my preference, I actually prefer doing the 10-hour straight type of study. Well, it is on your preference, but according to me, this 10-hour stretch works. But the most efficient way according to research, because I have to tell you, is that you have to divide your study time into days so that you do not forget the information and keep it for a longer period of time. Spaced repetition software does not end here. Spaced repetition means that after you have learned a particular thing, after, for example, 2 weeks, you revise that thing again. And after 2 months, you revise that thing again. This way, you are relearning the same thing many times, and the information, your brain thinks that the information is valuable and stores it. The second method is proceduralization. Proceduralization states that you should know how that things work rather than what that thing is. This is a very common type of learning. You need to learn how the system actually works rather than learning what is actually in that system. Now, the drawback of this method is that you might actually forget the facts, but you remember the main part. Let me give you an example. So for example, you learn how to type on a keyboard, right? And after some time, even if someone asks where is that letter located, in your mind, an image of keyboard will appear, and then you'll imagine yourself typing that letter. You'll not be able to exactly pinpoint where the letter is, right? So this is what happens. This is the drawback of proceduralization, that you end up forgetting the exact facts, but you remember the overall process. The third method is practicing beyond perfect, which means overlearning that thing. You practice a lot of questions on a particular task, which embeds it in your brain so that you do not forget it over a long period of time. I talked about it in the previous step, which was of feedback. The fourth is mnemonics. Now, it is not actually a great way of keeping things in your mind, but when there is a lot of facts or there's a lot of numbers involved, which we are bad at storing in our brains, you need to learn via mnemonics. So the periodic table, I learned the whole periodic table via mnemonics only, via groups and making silly mnemonics to learn it, because a picture retains more than 1,000 words. Now, the problem is with mnemonics is that you end up forgetting the mnemonics itself. And also, while remembering the information during the practice time, it takes a while to first use the mnemonics, then associate the learnings with that mnemonics and then use it. Rather, if you use proceduralization or overlearning, you are able to remember it better and in a shorter time. To conclude, to remember things like a master, there are mainly 3 steps involved. First is getting the things inside your head, which is retrieval. The second is making sure that the things that are inside your head are articulated in a right way, which is helped via feedback. And the third is keeping your things articulated for a long time, which is retention. With this note, I would like to conclude today's video. I hope you found the content valuable. In the last video, I talked about how you can learn things, and in this video, I talked about how you can keep things in your brain. Please write in the comment section below how we can improve on next time. Thank you and have a wealthy life ahead.